Dear students, welcome and thank you for tuning in. We are continuing our discussion about cell membranes and the phospholipid bilayer that encapsulates the cells and also encapsulates the functional organelles inside cells. We will talk about the functionality of the cell membrane. It's very important to realize that we are talking about a phospholipid bilayer that has hydrophilic heads and hydrophobic tails. It's self-assembled and it creates encapsulated a semi-permeable membrane. This is how it will look like in eukaryotic cells. And this membrane is very important and it affects and controls the protein interaction with biomaterials. And because there is a lot of proteins embedded inside the cellular membrane, and when a biomaterial is implanted inside the human body, the first thing that's going to interact with the material, the first things are the proteins that are embedded in the cellular membrane. So we need to learn more about the cellular membrane and what is consisted of and what is its function. So the purpose of the cell membrane is to control what goes in and out of the cell. So all items that go inside our cells are highly regulated. We will talk about how is that being performed. Before going into this, so let's summarize the functionality of the cell membrane. So cell membrane facilitates communication with other cells through receptors, and receptors are very important. We're going to talk about them. Receptors are proteins, and if you remember from previous lectures, protein formation starts from the DNA, and then when it's going to be becoming RNA, and then the RNA becomes a sequence of, there is a process to create a sequence of amino acids. The amino acids has side chains and they have charges. The amino acids, the chain of amino acids will reformed and it's to create a functional structure. Now, receptors are proteins that have been created by the cell using our DNA, our genetic information, and those receptors, after they've been created inside the cells, they go up and they go outside to be embedded in the cellular membrane. Those receptors will be created close by the nucleus, and then they will go and move to the cellular membrane and get embedded inside the cellular membrane. We will continue talking about receptors for a long time because receptors are the proteins that will interact with the biomaterials that we are implanting inside the human body. First function of the cell membrane is communication with other cells through receptors. So cell will interact with other cells, and also it facilitates adhesion. And we have adhesion, cell-to-cell adhesion, and also cell-to-matrix adhesion or cell-to-material adhesion. And when we mention matrix, this is the extracellular matrix, which is the environment that is filled with proteins where cells live in. So those are the proteins outside the cell. And we're going to talk about them in a little bit more detail in the coming videos. Now, proteins are found in the phospholipid bilayer, and they are called receptor proteins. Remember, we talked about receptors. And they deal with communication, recognition. So proteins, they can recognize where they are. In the phospholipid bilayer, we have a large amount of proteins, a huge amount of proteins, different proteins that do different functions: communication, recognition, and transport protein. If you want to take a look on the cell membrane, this is how it looks like. This is our cellular membrane. This is the hydrophilic heads and hydrophobic tails, and this is the phospholipid bilayer. And you can see these transmembrane proteins, that they're different shapes and different functionalities, and it's a complex structure. We agreed that we have proteins that are in the phospholipid bilayer, and they're transmembrane, which means that they have some parts, they go across the membrane, so part of it will be inside the cell and part of it will be outside of the cell. There are two types of proteins. Transport proteins, we have two kinds. They either being channels or carrier proteins. And channels are proteins that allow ions to move in and out the cell, and carriers are proteins that allow bigger molecules to go inside and outside the cells, other than ions. And transport is either active or passive. So if it's an active transport, it means that we need energy and if it's passive, we don't need energy. And why do we need energy? If we are, remember from chemistry, a phospholipid bilayer is a semi-permeable. So if you have a concentration gradient, molecules will move from the high concentration to the lower concentration. If this is the case, the membrane will be, we have some passive carriers in the phospholipid bilayer that allow to molecules to go along with the concentration gradient. So down the concentration gradient, which means they are passive. If we want to move something against the concentration gradient, so let's say if I want to move something from low concentration to high concentration, if I want to move a molecule from low concentration to high concentration, I need energy to do that because I'm going against the concentration gradient. And the type of energy used in the body is adenine triphosphate. It's ATP. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in the following videos. To accommodate all these functions, the cell plasma membrane takes a more complex structure, and this is how it will look like. It's a lot of molecules, a lot of proteins, different shapes and different functionalities. We need to keep this in mind because those proteins are the proteins that they will interact with our material when we implant it inside the human body. And remember, this is the inside of the cell and this is the outside of the cell, and all these receptors, they will be interacting with whatever is outside the cell. In order to carry out the specialized function of the cell membrane, molecules or specialized proteins are attached to the phospholipid bilayer. So those are the proteins. They sense the external environment, and when we say sensing, they sense the mechanical property of the environment outside, and also they transport molecules and ions. So you can move things in and out from the cell, in the cell and out of the cell, using these transport proteins, which are channels and carriers. I hope this is giving us a picture about how the cell membrane will look like and how our cells, what are the components in our cells that they will be interacting with the biomaterials that we implant. And I want to just highlight the sensing of the external environment. Cells sense the mechanical properties and mechanical behavior of their surroundings, and they act based on that. That's mechanotransduction of signals, and we will talk more about this in the coming videos. Thank you for watching. I hope that was helpful. Till the next video. Bye.